All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're diving into a really powerful story of self-discovery, and it's all based on the essays of a writer named Mehmet Ali GÜNER. It's really a story about how to find strength in what feels like your biggest failures, and how you can actually learn to rebuild yourself from the ground up. So, I want to start by asking you something. Just think about it for a second. Your life right now, your routines, your habits, all the familiar stuff, are you actually safe there? Or are you maybe just comfortable? And this quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? This is the core problem. The author points out that we have this tendency to cling to things that make us miserable. Jobs we hate, relationships that are going nowhere, just because the fear of the unknown is so much bigger. That familiar problem, well, at least you know what you're dealing with. The unknown one, that feels like a monster hiding in the closet. Okay, so let's dig into this first idea, this concept of the safe zone. It's a place where the pressure to just stay put can feel absolutely overwhelming. The author talks about this feeling like being trapped in a cage, but a cage built by everyone else's expectations. So as you can see here, a safe zone isn't always about being safe. It can actually be a place of total confusion. He did everything he was supposed to do, got good grades, was never late, but he was constantly asking himself, what do I actually want? That so-called safe zone didn't feel safe at all. It felt like a trap. So the big question is, how do you get out? Well, according to the author, the escape route often comes from the very thing we're trying to avoid the most, failure. And that brings us to what he calls life's breaking points. And this is where we need to totally flip our perspective. Instead of seeing a setback as a dead end, what if it's actually just a detour? A detour onto a path that's going to make you way more resilient. For the author, a few of these moments would change absolutely everything. So let's look at how this actually happened for him. First, he failed a class. Now, for a guy who had never failed at anything, this felt like the end of the world. But it was also kind of liberating. It was the first crack in this whole illusion of a perfect, planned-out life. Next, he accepted that his path might look different from everyone else's, which freed him from all that societal pressure. And finally, moving to a new country and constantly messing up the language, well, it taught him that making mistakes is just a normal part of learning. It's not a sign of defeat. And this right here is the key insight. It's so powerful. Breaking points don't actually break you. They expand your world. Every single time you're forced to face something you were scared of, that thing loses its power over you. Your safe space literally gets bigger to include new experiences, new skills, and a whole new level of confidence. You just become more flexible. Okay, so once you start building this new internal strength, it completely changes the game for how you deal with other people. This growth led the author to learn some really crucial lessons in human relations. One of the biggest lightbulb moments for him was figuring out the deal with envy. He realized that when he felt envious of someone else's success, it was because he wasn't appreciating the insane amount of work they put in to get there. The second he switched his thinking from, ugh, I wish I had that, to, wow, I really admire the work that took, the envy just dissolved. It was replaced by respect. And it wasn't just envy. He learned other important things too, like how crucial it is to set boundaries to protect yourself, the freedom that comes from not taking every little comment so personally, and, just accepting that sometimes, especially at work, relationships are just functional, and that's totally okay. You don't have to be best friends with everybody. Now, it's funny, once you start pulling at the threads of your own personal life, it's really only a matter of time before you start questioning the bigger stories you've been told your whole life. That personal growth, it often leads to a massive reevaluation of your entire worldview. So get this, the author describes being raised with this really intense national propaganda. You can see it on the left. He was taught that Turks were the source of everything great in the world. But then he actually stepped out into the world and he was hit with the reality on the right. A low national reputation, people using derogatory phrases, a total lack of recognition. The clash between these two realities was a huge, painful shock to the system, but it was a necessary one. And what he took away from this is really interesting. He realized the reason people cling so tightly to these big ideas, whether it's nationalism or religion or whatever, is this deep underlying fear that their life is meaningless without it. And so he thinks the antidote isn't to just fight them with a different truth, it's to practice tolerance. Tolerance lets us consider that other truths might exist without making us feel like our own identity is being attacked. And all of this brings us to the final and honestly, the most powerful part of this whole journey. After breaking down his relationship with the world around him, the author had to face the toughest relationship of all, the one he had with himself. He's brutally honest here. He talks about a time of just pure self-loathing, a feeling of being fundamentally broken, just unfit to be alive. It was this chaotic, painful place where every tiny mistake was just more proof that he was worthless. He was his own worst enemy, constantly knocking himself down. So he's trapped in this downward spiral of self-destruction, feeling like there's no way out. But then, a friend says something. Just one simple sentence, but it was so profound that it kicked off a complete revolution in his mind. We owe it to ourselves. Just let that sink in for a second. Not to our parents, not to society, but to ourselves. This idea that he actually had a debt to his own well-being was a totally new concept. For someone who saw himself as worthless, the idea of owing himself kindness, well, that was a world-changing moment. And all of a sudden, he had a new playbook. He realized he owed himself compassion, not contempt. He owed himself fair criticism, not destructive hate. He owed himself the right to screw up, and maybe most importantly, the right to just exist without feeling ashamed about it. It was this massive shift from self-destruction to self-care. And just like that, the war inside him didn't just disappear, but the battle lines were completely redrawn. Instead of fighting against himself, he started fighting for himself. He chose to lend himself a hand to pull himself up. He admits the struggles and the darkness might still be there, but now he knows how to live with them. He actively chooses life. And so that's where we'll leave it, by turning that same revolutionary question back to you. After everything you've been through, all of your own breaking points and quiet battles, what do you owe yourself?